And let's get on with the show. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Daf Yomi. To the thousands watching on Zoom and the millions watching on YouTube, it's a pleasure to have you here. Today, we're going to be doing page 100. If only there could be some kind of graphic that shoots down on the screen over here to celebrate the momentous occasion. 100 days of Masechet Shabbat. What a phenomenal accomplishment, whether you are in the Daf or not in the Daf. It is a phenomenal accomplishment to be here. And it's such a pleasure to see so many of you here this morning. So we're going to be doing page 100. We need to get it shared on all of the appropriate platforms. And without further ado, let's crack on.
99 days, but I don't want to be pedantic. But
oh, come on, David. So let's still not undermine the amazing accomplishments that it represents. So we are in the 11th chapter of Masechet Shabbat. It's a chapter called Hazorek, and we have been exploring lots of different permutations and different aspects to the halachas of hotza'ah, of transferring from one domain to another, with particular relevance to items that are being thrown as opposed to items that are being carried. And what we're going to see today is several different scenarios. We're going to go through quite a few Mishnayot today in their Gemaras, and we're going to explore this from other angles too. So that is where we are up to. We start off just a couple of lines up on page 99, on page Sadi Tes. 2 lines up from the bottom, we have a statement here from Rava. Is everybody able to see the screen? Brilliant. I'm going to assume that's a yes. So, Amar Rava says as follows. It's clear to me that when it comes to water being wherever it might be, that the water settles essentially into whatever the shape of the kli, whatever the shape of the vessel or utensil that it finds itself in. Water's always going to settle into that shape, and therefore it's always going to be considered as being a rested object.
I think we can see. Is it the same bit we can see?
I'm over here.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, no, sorry. Wrong Amarava. Thank you very much. Here we go. Amarava. Pshitali maim al gabe maim. Now, when it comes to bodies of water, wherever they might be, they are considered to be placed. All right? And, continues Rava, egos al gabe maim, when it comes to a nut that is placed on water, lav hainu hanachasan, that the nut is not considered to be at rest. That has particular relevance when it comes to the malacha of transferring things from one domain to another, because in order to violate a malacha of hotza'ah, it has to be put down. It has to be picked up from one place and put into another place. But if halachically it won't be considered put down, then you won't be in violation biblically of the malacha. So if you put it on top of water, then you've not really put it down, and that's because it's floating all over the place. But by Rava asks the question, Egoz bekli, ukli safal gabay mayim mahu. What would be the halacha if a nut was put into a vessel, into a dish, into a bowl, whatever it is, and that is then floating on top of the water? And then he's going to flesh out this question for us a bit more. Mi amrinan basar egoz azlinan v'hanach. Do we say that the halacha is going to follow the nut, and the nut is resting nicely inside the bowl, inside the dish, inside the vessel, and therefore it would be considered as having been put down? Or dilma batar kli azlinan v'halonayich. Or do we say that it follows the vessel which it's in? And since the vessel is not at rest, therefore the nut is not at rest either. And how convenient. What a way to start off today's daf the Gemara leaves it unresolved. Teku. Fascinating thing about the word teku. I'm not actually sure that we've had one in the various weeks of Daf Yomi Shiurim since January. I'm not sure we've had a teku together on the Daf, but there's a famous acronym that I don't remember the origin of, but it might be the Vilna Gaon. And he says that teku stands for the following four words. The four letters of teku stand for Tishbi, Yetaretz, Kushas, and Shilas. Eliyahu HaTishbi, Elijah, in the time of Mashiach, all of these questions will be resolved. But for now, it leaves it in an unresolved manner. And presumably, if we were to be asked this question as a matter of practical application, we would rule stringently. So that is our first chunk of Gemara for today. Then we continue. Shemen al gabe yayin. What if you have got oil floating on top of wine? Well, says the Gemara, Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri v'Rabbanan. That enters into the same machlokes as exists between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and Rabbanan. Ditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Shemen shetzaf al gabe yayin. You've got oil that is floating on top of wine. V'naga tavul yom b'shemen. And then a tavul yom comes and touches the oil. What is a tavul yom? A tavul yom is somebody who has been impure, and they have purified themselves at one stage of the day, and their actual status does not change until the end of the day after sundown, at which point they would be, if they were a Kohen, they would be allowed to consume and to touch truma. But if they touch it before that point, then they're going to invalidate the truma. So the scenario that's being presented over here is you've got wine of truma and you've got oil of truma, and they are side by side, on top of each other in a cup or a bowl or barrel or whatever it is, and comes along this guy, a tavul yom, and he touches the oil. So what impact is that going to have on the wine? Do we say that oil floats on top of the wine and then they are not actually connected in the sense that they can pass the invalidation through? Or do we say that they are considered connected, and if you touch the oil, then the oil is going to invalidate the wine underneath? So that's the machlokas. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Let's try that one again. So shemen shetzaf al gabe yayin v'naga tavul yom b'shemen. So if you have got oil floating on top of wine, and then a tavul yom comes along and touches the oil, says the first position in this quotation, in this Mishnah of the Rabbanan, lo pasal ela shemen. He's only going to invalidate the oil. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, shneim chibur ze lazeh. They are actually considered combined, and therefore, if you were to touch the oil, you would also invalidate the wine as well, according to him. Amar Abaye, Abaye says, bo bershus harabim amuka asara v'rachva shemona. What if you have a situation where you've got, let me just check, am I in the right place? No, I'm not. Here we go. What if you've got a pit in a public space, and it is 10 tefachim deep, and it is 8 tefachim across? So 8 of these fistfuls across, and it's 10 tefachim deep. Now, if that's the case, and the size of the pit is 8 tefachim across, 4 tefachim over, and then 10 tefachim deep, that becomes its own domain. That becomes a private domain that exists within the public space. And if that's the case, then transferring between one to the other is going to mean that you're violating the malacha of hotza'ah, right? But here is the catch to the scenario. You've got a pit in the public space which is 10 tefachim deep, and it's 8 tefachim across. And what you do now is v'zarak lasocha machatzeles, and you throw some kind of mat or mattress inside this pit, and it lands directly in the middle, across the length, across the width, no, whatever, the length of it's a 4 tefachim mat and it lands and divides up the space now. So what you have is you had an 8 tefachim pit across with a mat in the middle, meaning that on either side now, the two spaces that it's created is now less than 4 tefachim each. And if it's less than a 4 tefachim square, it's no longer its own domain, right? I hope that's making sense. So what you've done by throwing this mat and it's landed in dividing up the two spaces, you've created a situation where it did exist as a public domain, as a private domain, and now you've nullified that that status, and it is no longer two private domains. So what would the halacha be? So according to the first position in this quotation, in this source, if he threw it in, then he would be chayav. However, let me try that one again. So he's just thrown it into the pit. We're having a good day, guys, don't worry. Throws it into the pit, it's a private domain, says the position in the Mishnah chayav. What if you throw it in and now it's dividing up the pit? That's where we wanted to be. You've thrown it in and it's dividing up the pit. So now what you've done is you've nullified the private domain status, and so you haven't transferred from public to private, because by dividing that pit, you've now taken away its private status and it only has the public status once again, which is why Abaye would say, Patur, you would be exempt because you have not transferred from one domain to another. I hope that butchered explanation is somewhat clear. La Abaye, according to Abaye, that a mat has the capacity to nullify the status of a domain in such a way. The same would apply for any dirt that would fill in and change the dimensions of a pit. That would work in the same way. So a physical entity, according to Abaye, has the capacity to change the status of a domain. If by throwing an item in, be it dirt, be it a mat, be it some other physical item, you can change the domain, you can change the status if it now changes the measurements. That's according to Abaye. Lo Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, who asked the question regarding dirt, and according to him, a mat is all the same. It's obviously not going to eliminate the status of the partition. But Amar Abaye says, what if you've got a pit in the public domain which has a depth of 10 tefachim? It's 4 by 4 across, which means it has its own status as a private space, but Malaya Mayim, but it's filled with water. V'zark lasocha, and you throw an item into it, and then what's the halacha? The halacha is, according to Abaye, chayav. You're going to be chayav. Again, when we say chayav, we're talking about you've done a malacha by accident, and the question is whether you are going to be chayav to bring a korban or not. You're not allowed to do any of these things, but if you do them, will you have to bring a sacrifice or not for doing it inadvertently? So, if it's filled with water, the presumption here with Abaye is that it has not changed the status of the pit. And so, if you throw something into it, you're going to be chayav. But, says Abaye, Malaya Peiros, if it's filled with fruits, which are physical things, entities, and you throw something into it, then the fact that you've got fruit now, which is reducing the depth of the pit, it's no longer 10 tefachim, and if it's no longer 10 tefachim, it's not considered its own space. So according to Abaye, if you throw something into a pit that is filled with fruits, even though the pit is 10 tefachim, the presence of the fruits has now lifted up that that depth level. So if you throw something into it, you're going to be patur. You're not going to have violated the biblical transference from one domain to another, and so you won't have to bring a sacrifice. Again, you're not allowed to do it, but you won't have violated. My timer, what is Abaye's reasoning? Mayim lo mevatle mechitsasa, peiros mevatle mechitsasa, because water is not going to be enough to eliminate the partition, meaning to change the status but fruit will be. Tanya Namihachi, we have another brayso that teaches along the same lines. Hazorek min hayam le'isratia. If you throw an item from the sea has the halachic status of a karmelis, which is neither a public space nor a private space. But you throw it to an isratia. Do we have a translation here of isratia? To the street, to the highway, which is a public space. So we're saying here, we're throwing an item from the sea to the highway, umin ha'asratia leyam, or from the highway to the sea, you're going to be pater, because you have not violated public to private or private to public. Rabbi Shimon Omer, im yesh b'makom shezark amuk asara b'rachav arba chayav. Rabbi Shimon says, however, that if under all this water there's a space which is 10 tefachim deep and 4 tefachim across, Rabbi Shimon says you're going to be chayav if you're throwing from there, because the water is completely nullified. It's not considered to be there. So you're standing in a pit which is 10 tefachim deep and 4 tefachim across, and so therefore you've gone from a private space into a public space, or a public space into a private space. So that is consistent with what we were saying before about what Abaye said, that water nullifies the status. It's as if it's not there, and fruits or other physical items will not. We continue with the next Mishnah. Hazorek arba amos bakotel. So you're throwing an item, you're standing in a public space, and you throw an item 4 amos, but instead of it landing on the floor, it lands on a wall. We're going to expand on this further. You'll see why in a second. But for now, the presumption is that it's landing on a wall, sticking to a wall. Okay, so the Mishnah says as follows: if it lands on the wall at a point which is 10 tefachim or higher from the ground level, then it's as if you have thrown an item in the air. And the reason for that is because, I think as we've said before, a public domain has an airspace of up to 10 tefachim, meaning up to 10 tefachim, if you are standing in a public space, that is considered the public domain. Above 10 tefachim, the airspace is actually called a makom patur. I guess you could call it an exemption zone. It's not considered part of the airspace of the public domain. So if you throw this item and it sticks to the wall and it's higher than 10 tefachim, it has landed in a makom patur. It has landed in an exemption zone. And if you do that, then you're going to be patur. It's as if you just thrown it in the air. However, says the Mishnah, lamata me'asara tefachim, if it lands 10 tefachim or lower to the ground, kazarik ba'aretz, then it's as if you have thrown it along the ground, in which case you've thrown it arba amos, you've thrown it 4 amos, and you're going to be chayav. And says the Mishnah, just to round it all off, hazarik ba'aretz arba amos chayav. If you throw an item on the ground 4 amos, then you're going to be chayav. So the Gemara starts as follows. The Gemara asks a question, this item has not landed. Why is this item not landed? Because at this point in the Gemara, we're presuming that it has not stuck to the wall. Let's say you've just thrown a tennis ball and it's bounced off the wall and then come back again. So this is why the Gemara asks the question first of all, well, hang on a second, the item has not landed anywhere, it just bounced on the wall. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so Rabbi Yochanan has to explain to us what the Mishnah is dealing with, and he says, sorry, I'm over here now. And he says, Rabbi Yochanan, we're dealing with a case where we're dealing with a juicy cake of figs, which is sticky. And so when it gets thrown against the wall, it actually sticks to the wall. And that is the relevance of whether it lands 10 tefachim or higher or not. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, Amar Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Chia, Zarek lemala ma'asara v'halcha v'nacha b'chur kolshu banu lemachlokes Rabbi Meir v'Rabbanan. If somebody threw something at a wall above 10 handbreadths from the ground and it rested in a crevice in the wall. Now this crevice doesn't have to be particularly big, it can be any size. But if it rests in a crevice or crack in the wall, then we come to a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbanan. Rabbi Meir says that whatever the size of the crevice, we actually fill in that gap, as it were. We consider that place where it has landed to be enough size to be considered a separate domain, meaning you've thrown from a public space to a private space, and according to Rabbi Meir, you're going to be chayav. But according to the rabbis, they say that we do not carve out this space to be considered the required size, and you're not going to be chayav. Tanya nami hachi, we learn a barais along these lines. If you throw an item and it lands higher than 10 tefachim, but it lands on the wall in a crevice of any size, Rabbi Meir mechayev v'chachamim potrim. Then Rabbi Meir would say you are chayev, and the chachamim would say you are patur. Okay. Am Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, he says as follows: Tell hamislaket asara mitoch habar. You have got a mound, and this mound is inclined. It's on a slope, and at the height of the slope, it reaches a point of 10 tefachim or more. But obviously, at the bottom of the mound, it doesn't. And the question that we're dealing with, it's a mound where the incline is so steep that it reaches 10 tefachim high within a space of 4 amos, 4 cubits. So the presumption over here is that, I mean, it's all based on Pythagoras' theorem over here, I would imagine, that the slope to be able to reach 10 tefachim high within 4 amos is so steep that it will be considered its own domain. So that is the situation that we deal with in this point in the Gemara. So we've got a mound that is sloping up 10 tefachim high within 4 amos, the zarak v'nach al gabav, and you throw an item and it lands on it, then according to Rav, you're going to be chayav. Tanya nami hachi, mavoi sheshava lasoicha v'naseh majon l'rishus harabim. You've got an alleyway which along the actual space of the alleyway is level, but then it slopes down very sharply towards the public space. Or shava l'rishus harabim v'naseh majon l'soicha. Or it's at equal ground level to the public space, but then it slopes up very sharply, or slopes down very sharply to the rest of the alleyway. So the question that we're trying to deal with here, or what we're trying to establish, is the fact that this slope turns the alleyway into a separate domain. And if it turns it into a separate domain, then the following halacha transpires. So the Gemara quotes here, "Einot sarich lo lechi v'lo kora." Ordinarily, if you were trying to create an eruv for an alleyway, you would have to ensure that, is everybody able to see me, by the way? Have you just kicked out? Is anybody there? I think I might be talking to the wall. Anybody able to see me or hear me?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Yeah, we can now.
When did that cut out?
Just about a minute ago.
Okay. I'm sorry for that. All right, so let's just backtrack a little bit. Top of the Yamud. I'm joking. So okay, so Tanya Namihachi, we have a Baraisa which supports this, which says the same thing. You've got an alleyway that is sloping down towards the public space, or you've got a slope from ground level on the public domain, which is scaling up or scaling in whichever direction to the rest of the alleyway. So the halacha is as follows: it doesn't need any of the fixtures in place to turn it into a separate domain from the public space. With regards to alleyways and creating an eruv, so what we are taught is, in order to carry inside the alleyway, you'd have your 3 walls of an alleyway, and you'd have to create at the junction with the public space, what's called a lechi or kora. Different types of beams that mean that halakhically the alleyway will be considered enclosed, right? Now you need to do that if the alleyway opens up onto the public space. But what we're saying over here is that the slope being at such a steep incline creates an entirely different status. That incline represents a wall according to the halakha. According to the halakha, because it's so steep. And therefore, according to this part of the Baraisa, you're not going to need any of the other types of halakhic representations to close off the space, because the slope does it for you. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer Tela Mislachet Asar Mitoch Habar Ezag V'Nach Al Gabav Chav. Rabbi Chanina says that if you throw onto a mound which has a height of 10 tefachim, a slope of less than 4 amos, it's considered its own space, and if you throw on top of it, you're going to be chayav. Okay, we move on to a new Mishnah. As I said, we're going to be seeing a few different Mishnahs today. So we continue with the following. Zarek l'toch daled amos, v'nisgalgel chutz l'daled amos. What if you throw an item within 4 amos? So you are standing in one place in a public domain, and you intend to just throw it a couple of centimeters or a meter, or whatever it is, but either way, it's less than 4 cubits. So if you were to do that, you wouldn't violate Hot Sa'ah in a public space because it's less than 4 amos. But what happens if it rolls beyond that threshold? It rolls beyond 4 amos. Says the first position in the Mishnah, Patur, you're going to be exempt because you had no intention of violating in that way. And if it ended up happening, that was not your intention, and therefore you're going to be exempt. But, says the Mishnah, Chutz l'daled amos, you want to throw it beyond 4 amos, then nisgalgel l'toch daled amos, you put a bit of backspin on it, and then it rolls back to within 4 amos. Then, says the Mishnah, you're going to be chayav. You're going to be liable to bring a korban for doing this accidentally. Again, as we've said before, we're not doing these things on purpose. We're doing these things by accident and then realizing that it's Shabbat and we weren't supposed to do that. And the question is whether you need to bring a sacrifice or not for that action. So if you intended to throw it beyond 4 amos and then it rolled back in, you're going to be chayav. Says the Gemara, v'halonach, but it hasn't come to rest beyond 4 cubits. And so, why would you be chayav? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, and he was the one who said it in the last Gemara as well. V'hu shanach al gabe mashu. It came to rest on something. Tanya nami hachi. We have a supporting brisa. Zarak chutz l'daled amos. You throw an item beyond 4 amos, the threshold of 4 amos. V'dachafato haruach v'hichnisato. And something, the wind is blowing it back in to within 4 amos. So va'afal pisha chazra siyaso patur. Even if it blows back out again and goes beyond 4 amos, you're going to be patur because it was not your action that left it in a position beyond 4 amos. But achazaso haruach mashu afal pisha chazra v'hichnisato chaya. But if the wind seized it briefly, that's a great translation over there. Somehow, this item is flying and the wind is pushing it such a force that it kind of hovers there for a moment before flying back into the safe less than 4 amos distance. So then you're going to be chayav, and that's because this battle that it has with the wind is going to be considered as if it had come to rest beyond 4 amos, and that's why you're going to be chayav. Amar Rava, not to be confused with the Amar Rava of the previous stuff. So Amar Rava, Tov Gimel. It must be within 3 handbreadths of the ground to be considered to have come to rest. The Rabbanan Sarich Hanacha al Gabe Mashu. According to the Rabbanan, it can't just get caught up by the wind. It has to actually come to physical rest on top of something physical. Yasiv Merema v'ka'ama la lahashmaita. Merema was sitting and was stating this halacha. Amalei Ravina la Merema. And Ravina said to Merema, and we turn the page. Love, Hainu, Masnisin. Isn't this what we learned in the Mishnah? V'amar Rabbi Yochanan v'hu shanach al gabe mashu. that liability only comes when it rests on top of something. Amar lei misgalgal ka'amart. Are you talking about a case of rolling? Misgalgal ein sofa lanoach. If it's rolling, then it's never going to come to rest. Aval hai kevan de sofa lanoach aval gavdel nach command nach dami kamash melan. However, with regards to this, which passed within 3 handbreadths of the ground, we say as follows: since it's going to ultimately come to rest, even if it hasn't yet come to rest, the object is going to be considered as if it had come to rest. I hope that is somewhat clear. Says the Mishnah, Hazorek bayam arba amos patur. If you are throwing an item in the sea and it goes 4 amos, it goes 4 cubits, you're going to be patur. You're going to be exempt. Why? Because it's not gone from public to private or private to public. Because a sea is considered to be a carmelis. Im haya rakak mayim urshus harabim mahaleches ba. But what about this? If you've got a puddle, translates it there as a swamp. If you've got a muddy puddle, as they say up north, and you've got the public domain which is passing through it, hazorek letocho dalad amos chayav. So if you throw an object 4 amos into this muddy puddle, you're going to be chayav. Bekama hu rakak mayim. How deep does this swamp, does this puddle need to be? Hachos me'asar tefachim. It must be less than 10 tefachim, because if it was more than 10 tefachim and it was 4 tefachim across, then it's going to be a different domain entirely. Rakak mayim v'reshus harabim ma'aleches bo hazorik b'soicha daladamos chayav. If you've got a muddy puddle, if you have a swamp and the public domain is passing through it, then one who throws an item into the swamp for daladamos is going to be chayav. So now we have to see what all of this is talking about. Amalei hahomer abanan larava. One of the sages, one of the rabbis, said to Rava, Bishlama hiluch hiluch. Granted, I can understand the need for the Mishnah to use the words or the wording of hiluch, right? Twice in the Mishnah. Where are the 2 times that it appears? So the word in the Mishnah was mehaleches, that it's passing through. The public domain is passing through this puddle. So the rabbi is saying to Rava, I can understand the need to say that word twice. Hakamash malan hiluch al yedei hadachak shmei hiluch, because it needs to be able to teach us that passage under duress is considered passage. We'll understand that a little bit more in a second. Tashmish al yedei hadachak lo shmei tashmish. Usage under duress is not considered usage. But, says this rabbi, Ela rakak trezimni lamali. Why did I need to mention the word swamp twice, the word puddle twice? So the Gemara, the answer that comes back is as follows: Chad b'yemos hachama v'chad b'yemos gshamim. One is referring to a puddle in the summer, and one is referring to a puddle in the winter. Utsrichi, and I need both of these. If I only learnt one, if it only appeared once in the Mishnah, then I would say as follows: Hava amina hani mili b'yemos hachama. Then I would say it only applies in good weather, in the summer. Because people in the summertime will be happy to walk through and wade through this puddle because it will cool them. But if they go through this puddle in the wintertime, they would never do such a thing because it's going to make them get ill. So therefore, we need to know that it's a problem to throw an item in the summertime, because why would they ever be inside this puddle in the wintertime? And if I'd only taught this Mishnah and applied it only into the winter, then I would have said as follows: since you're dirty anyway walking through the mud during the wintertime, then going through this puddle is not going to be of any consequence to you, and it's not going to make, you're not going to care about it because you're going to get dirty anyway. But if it was the summertime, then maybe you'd avoid it. And so that is why it had to present 2 different types of puddles to us in order that we should understand that it applies in both extremities of weather. Abaye said, that it was necessary for the following reason. I would think it might enter my mind that this is only going to apply if the swamp, if the puddle is not 4 amos across. But if it was 4 amos across, then akufe makfile, then a person is not going to try and go through it, they'll just go around it. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says, I need it to teach me because I might have thought that this applies, that it applies where there is a swamp that is 4 amos, but if it's not 4 amos, then I'm just going to skip over it, I'm just going to jump over it, and I'm not going to walk through it. But as the Rav Ashi Rav Ashi goes according to his opinion, the Amar Rav Ashi, Haiman Dezarik, Benach Aguda de Gamla Mechayev Shahari Rabin Bokim Bok. Rav Ashi says that one who threw an object and it came to rest on the beam of a bridge, then that person is going to be liable. Why is that person going to be liable? Because even though many people say, so what's the issue over here? So we've got beams, which would be a space that is not big enough to be considered a separate domain. But the fact that it, one second, why are you going to be chayiv? You're going to be chayiv because, right, there you go. So the beams along this bridge are individually small enough, but together they create a different domain space. So the total surface area of these beams means that it creates a different domain, and therefore you would be chayiv. And the fact that many people step on it means that according to Rav Ashi, that it creates a different space. If any of you have got some great footnotes in your Koran edition, then yeah, that's going to help you understand that a little bit more. But that is consistent with Rav Ashi, who says that if something is 4 cubits, that if something is less than 4 cubits, then you're going to skip over it, you're going to step over it. And that is consistent with throwing something onto a beam of a bridge, because people will pass through that as well. Okay. We could spend all day on this, guys. Let's go to the next Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Hazorik min hayam layabasha. You throw an item from the sea to the dry land. The sea, as we said, is a Carmelis. The dry land is not. The dry land is going to be a public space. Min hayabasha layam, or you throw an item from dry land into the sea. Min hayam lasfina, or from the sea onto a boat. Min asfina layam, or you throw it from the boat, which is a private space, to the sea, which is a Carmelis. Umin hasfina lachaverta, or you throw it from one boat to another, then patur. The Mishnah says you're going to be patur because it's a Carmelis. You're not biblically throwing from one domain to the other. Spinos kashuros zubazu. If you have got 2 boats which are tied together, metaltilin mizulazu, then even though they are 2 separate private domains, since they are tied together, you may carry from one to the other. Im einon kashuros, if they're not tied together, if they're not tied together, even if they are so close to one another, you're still not going to be allowed to carry between the 2 different domains. It's Safina. It was stated about a boat. What is going to be the appropriate way to draw water from the sea to be able to bring it onto a boat? So different rabbis come up with different solutions. Rav Huna Amar, Motziin Hemena Ziz Kol Shehum Male. What you should do is, you should extend a piece of wood down into the water, and then you can fill up your bucket or fill up your bowl or whatever it is with water from the sea. And as we'll see in a moment, the reason for that is fundamentally, according to Rav Huna, you are allowed to draw water from the sea and bring it onto your boat. And so you just have to make some kind of symbolic distinction to make sure that you would never come in the future to violate, you would never violate Hatza'ah in a biblical way. So according to Rav Huna, you put a piece of wood out of the boat, and then you're allowed to draw water normally. Rav Chisda v'Rabba bar Rav Huna Amri, Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna say that what you have to do is, Ose makom arba umemale, you have to create a space of 4 by 4 tfachim, and then within that space you're allowed to draw water. And that's because, we'll see in a minute why that is. Rav Huna Amar Motzi Hemen Aziz Kol Shehu Memale. Rav Huna says that you have to stick a stick out of the boat and then fill up as normal. Kasava Karmelis Me'ara Mashchinan Va'avira Makom Patur Hu. So what we're going to see now echoes back to something that we were mentioning at the beginning of the session. Rav Huna holds that the Karmelis is measured from the seabed. Okay, and as we said, there's only 10 tefachim, which is considered the domain, and after that point it becomes a makom patur, it becomes an exemption zone. So if you are measuring the Karmelis from the bottom of the sea, then the air where you are trying to collect your water from is an exemption zone. So fundamentally, you can, it's like no man's land. Fundamentally, you can take the water and bring it onto your boat without any problems. But the reason why you put the stick over there, the projection, is just as a symbolic distinction, so that you would never come in the future to violate Hotza'ah in another way which would not be allowed. So that's because you're measuring from the seabed. So you go 10 tefachim up from the seabed, at which point you reach the exemption zone. So when you're taking this water, the airspace is for sure going to be okay to transfer the water in. Rav Chisda v'Rabba bar Rav Huna Amri, but Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna, they say, Ose makom arba mamale, that you have to make this area, this frame of 4 by 4 handbreadths, and that way, the reason that they say that is because kasavri karmelis misafas maya mashkina. You measure the karmelis from the surface of the water, and so the surface of the water is where the karmelis starts. So 10 tefachim above that is going to be airspace that you're not allowed to take from, and that is why they say you create a frame that reaches the surface of the water. And if you make a frame that reaches the surface of the water, what you've done is you've extended your private domain down to the sea. And if you're extending your private domain down to the sea, then you can start to pick up the water from there without being worried of transferring from one domain to the other. Amalei Rav Nachman l'Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rav Nachman said to Rabba bar Rav Huna, Rav Huna, what about Rav Huna? According to Rav Huna, the Amar Motzi Hemin Aziz Kol Shehu Mamale, he said that you have to stick a projection out of the side of your boat in order to fill up. Zimnin deleka asara become metalta mikam neslush sarabim. Why is Rav Huna not concerned that the distance to the seabed is less than 10 tefachim? In which case you are going to be violating, because you're going to be transferring from a karmelis to your private domain. He says that we have a tradition that ships, boats are never going to travel in waters that are less than 10 tefachim deep, because they could get stuck. And so if the boat is able to move freely, it must mean that there is enough space underneath the boat to the sea floor to be able to then take the water out without being in danger of transferring from karmelis to private domain. But then he answers back, but there is a front part of a projection. The boat has a protrusion that is going to mean that at one side it could be shallower or moving through shallower waters than others. Amar Rav Safra Geshushe Azli Kama. Don't worry, says Rav Safra, they would have these depth sticks. They would have people who measure the depth of the water and would make sure that it was always 10 tefachim deep. Amalei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said to Rav Chia bar Avin. He said to Rav Chia bar Avin, according to Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna, who said that you have to make this box to be able to draw water. So Rav Chisda, Rabba bar Rav Huna, Damri Osle Makom Abba Male. According to them, they had said that you need to have this 4 by 4 frame to be able to draw water. Shofchin today, heichi shadi lehu. How would they have been allowed to discard their wastewater? How would they have been allowed to throw it off the boat? Because if they do that, they're going to be changing domains. If you want to tell me that they're using the same 4x4 box to discard their wastewater, well, that's just a bit gross. So the Gemara answers, the shadi lehu adafna de safina. What they used to do was they used to drip it down one side of the boat so that they wouldn't be lobbing it into the sea. It would just kind of drip down of its own accord. To which the Gemara asks, that if that's the case, then it's still their doing that it's going into the sea. They've still dribbled it over the side of the boat. Why should that not be a violation? It's going from one domain to the other on account of their action. And so the Gemara, as we finish off the day, says, Kocho bekarmelis lo gazru. The rabbis were not so strict as to issue a decree about this kind of indirect action. So the fact that you kind of dribble it off the edge, that's okay. The fact that the gravity takes it down to the sea, even though you've caused it, the rabbis were not so strict as to say that should be a violation. And that is why then they were able to do it in that way. And that's where we'll leave it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining. We wish you a wonderful and meaningful day, a wonderful and meaningful week, and we'll see you all very soon.